Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of WWD What Went Down. I'm going to be making a video after every primetime game. So, Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night games. I'll make a game recapping what happened in all of those ones. I might also make a general video based on all the Sunday games in general. There's just too many to cover, I think, in an individual video for all of them. But I might just see if I make a video just to cover them all in a short gist. To kick things off, we had Aiden Hutchinson for my team. I think he did solid. I think he was very close to getting multiple sacks. Overall, I can't complain. He was a little bit in the red, but overall, it wasn't that bad. We had Pussy, who had Nick Bolton and L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed didn't do bad, but Nick Bolton actually severely underperformed his expectations or his projections for the week. That was a bit of a surprise. Kansas City, actually, as you'll hear me talk about with another guy, they were very surprising with their linebackers. Nick Bolton wasn't necessarily bad, he just wasn't getting many tackles. And then they also were rotating linebackers such as Drew Tranquil and their rookie. They barely actually played Drew Tranquil, which is kind of a surprise to me. I thought he was going to actually at least have some upside. Pussy actually did have something good going for him on the bench, and that was Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice in the first half, I could be wrong. I believe all of those points he had, 11.6, which is solid. It's nothing great, nothing bad, came from the first half. So overall, he was definitely the most effective receiver, I'd say, for the Chiefs. I think he had a touchdown, about 2 or 3 catches. You can actually check the stats here. He had 3 catches, 29 yards, and a touchdown. Definitely the most effective wide receiver for the Chiefs. So that's something Pussy can look forward to. Maybe eventually down the road, he could be pretty good when Kels comes back. We'll have to wait and see. That's pretty much how that went for last night. Overall, between our matchup, I'd say it helped me out a little bit compared to Pussy. Pussy fell down the projections quite a bit, while I only fell down a few points. Next up, we had Scrambled and waggled game against PMC. This was a surprise to me. Tracy Walker actually did not even start last night. This was a complete shocker. What's his name now? Mr. Steeler Girl, who has CJ Gardner-Johnson. He was actually the full-time starter. So, Evan, if you're watching, this guy is pretty much cuttable. I don't see him starting at all. I don't think he played a single snap last night. That was a pretty big surprise to me. And then you had Jack Campbell, and I did warn you to bench Jack Campbell in the linebackers video just because you didn't know what you were going to see. And in a scenario kind of like the one that I was talking about with the Chiefs linebackers, Jack Campbell really didn't play much. It was mostly, you'll hear it whenever I talk about, I'm forgetting his name, Karen. Whenever I talk about Karen, aka Brandon's team, Alex Anzalone was actually the main linebacker they were using last night. I think that could change by the end of the season, but for now, like I said, I think it would have been smarter to play your actual linebacker, get some consistency. You did have some good news with Sam Laporta for his first game in. He was doing great at blocking. He was doing great at catching. He was doing good at RAC. He was doing good pretty much around the board. He might actually be a solid stash for you going into the season. He might end up being your starter now that you lost Pitts. Heck, he could be the next TJ Hawkinson. He looked very good in the targets he did have. Unfortunately, Detroit was an insanely run-heavy team last night. But overall, he was looking very good for you. PMC, Mahomes did Mahomes things, but unfortunately, he was throwing the 2x4s out there. He really didn't have a chance in hell. Yeah, it was kind of bad. Kadarius Toney, look at them 5 targets, -1 rushing yard, 1 catch for 1 yard, and everybody who watched the game knows the catch wasn't even a catch; it was a pitch. But yeah, he was terrible. Kadarius Toney, fun fact, actually gave the other team more catches than he realistically had last night. Yeah, that was pretty bad. I wouldn't say cut him necessarily, but that was probably about as bad of a start as you'll ever see to a fantasy season. Isaiah Pacheco, he did okay. It was I will say this is kind of concerning. Even though 10 points isn't necessarily bad, it's still 4 points under the projection. It is a big concern to me when your whole receiving core is horrible and you're still not able to get your running back at least in the game to a point where he'll be fantasy relevant. Keep in mind, when Kels comes back, Pacheco will probably start going back downhill even further. So that might actually be a bad sign overall instead of just a meh sign. Jared Goff had 16 points. He started the game out looking atrocious. He got better as the game went on, but overall, he was missing receivers left and right. He was kind of the opposite scenario where he had solid receivers but just couldn't hit them for shit. Granted, Marvin Jones dropped quite a few balls as well, but overall, Jared Goff really didn't look that great. Um, I'm sure he'll be better from a fantasy term in future weeks, but this definitely looks like more of a run-heavy offense than it was last year. 100%. Maybe that changes when they get Jameson Williams back. Who knows? But overall, it definitely looked more run-heavy, so I wouldn't be too excited with Jared Goff, at least off that first performance. And overall, I'd say that between PMC and Evan, that probably helped Evan out just a little bit more, just because you both had horrible performances, but PMC had way more cards on the table for that specific game, and it really seemed to have backfired. But overall, Evan's still going to have to do a lot to come back in that game. Here we had Ricktatorship. I don't believe had any single Chiefs or Lions. I could be wrong. Let me double check. Yeah, no, he doesn't. And then we actually had Brandon, who actually went into the green. One of the, I believe, only two people in the entire league to go green last night, who had Alex Anzalone, who went up about a point and a half in the red, which isn't that bad. I actually expected him to do worse with all these linebackers. I do think as the season goes on, he'll progressively lose his role as the starting linebacker, but we'll have to wait and see. And then Justin Reed had a solid game. I think most of his points came from tackle solo. He had a few pass deflections, tackle assists. He did solid. So overall, Brandation had a good start to his Thursday night game, but nothing too crazy to mention. I would be worried about Alex Anzalone going into the future games, though, but for now, it looked like he was the main starter. Then we had MILF and Jaybay. Jaybay actually had Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was by far the best player in the entire game last night. Amon-Ra St. Brown was catching open catches. I believe he had a touchdown. He was doing pretty much everything. 9 targets, 6 for 71. That's exactly what you can ask for out of a receiver. He was probably the only thing you can definitively say looked good from last night's game. David Montgomery, on the other hand, was very alarming in the sense of the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the league, yet with 21 carries, I believe he was only able to put up 7.4 fantasy points, if I'm not mistaken. So that's 74 yards and 21 carries. That really isn't that great. That's about 3-4 yards per carry, somewhere in between there, probably like 3.5. Plus, he didn't get a single target, and this is a PPR league, so he's not going to be as valuable naturally. Overall, he would be stuck at around 7 points, but that kind of got inflated with the touchdown. So at least Montgomery's probably going to be getting end zone looks, but overall, the only good thing you can really say to look excited for here is that they didn't use Gibbs much. And then Man I Love Football had Jerick McKinnon, who had 1 catch for 10 yards on the game, and that was it. Like, I don't think the Chiefs actually used him much, if at all, and I think when they did use him, it was after Pacheco got hurt. And even then, they weren't using running backs. Plus, Kels will come back soon. It's just not a good situation. I don't really see much value in McKinnon. Coming up next, we had Mr. Steeler Girl and Big Yawners. And here we had Jahmyr Gibbs with 8 points. Jahmyr Gibbs, in the plays he did play, he did really good, as you'll see with that 7 for 42. I believe that's just over 5 yards per carry. Actually, it's probably closer to 6, actually, close to 6 yards per carry. He also had the catches, so he had 2 catches for 18 yards. But in terms of fantasy, he didn't do great. There's nothing to worry about here if you're Mr. Steeler Girl. As the season goes on, I do think Jahmyr Gibbs will start to get way more of a role in the offense. I think he'll start to get way more catches. I think he'll do better overall. It is a disappointing first week, but like I said, just give it time. I think he'll start doing pretty good. And overall, that did drop you in the red, so it's a good thing for Big Yawners. And then you also had C.J. Gardner-Johnson, as I was talking about how I was surprised they benched Tracy Walker. But Gardner-Johnson went in, and he was actually making plays left and right. got a solid 12 points. I'm not saying he's necessarily better than your other safeties, but at least you know he's playing, so you have an option there. That was kind of out of left field. And then we had Booty and Toxic, who both went red as well. You had Sky Moore, who did just nothing. Like, all of these Chiefs receivers, with the exception of Pussy's Rasheed Rice, did absolutely nothing last night. I'm not joking. It was kind of miserable to watch. Valdez Scantling had a few catches. I don't know if anybody owns him or not in this league. I'll have to check it in a second. But overall, the receivers were just dog shit. The kicking game, and this is kind of the thing about kickers, is they are so hard to predict. Butker did solid because the Chiefs scored 2 field goals. Even though the Lions won the game, they scored only touchdowns, so you weren't really able to get much with that. I wouldn't say that's something to look forward to every week. Like, it's not I wouldn't say either of these players are cuttable or startable over each other. They're both solid. And then that was pretty much it for the week. Let me check who had Valdez Scantling. Valdez Scantling is actually a free agent. He only had 2 catches, which, don't get me wrong, is still pretty dog shit, but he was the only one who was actually doing anything last night besides Rasheed Rice. I just figured I'd point that out. I'm trying to think if there was any other defensive players that stood out. I remember seeing George Karlaftis made a few big plays at the D-line. Let me see how many points he had. Now, there was actually a few people. Brian Branch, oh, that was because he had the pick 6. That's not going to be too reliable. Trent McDuffie is one. He was looking like the new L'Jarius Sneed out there. I'm not saying to drop L'Jarius Sneed if you have him or anything like that. But Trent McDuffie, for what it was worth, was all over the place, making tackles left and right. He was doing all sorts of stuff, getting tackles for losses. So he might be someone worth keeping an eye on. And then, like I said, George Karlaftis actually was looking solid with the missing Chris Jones in that defense. So overall, he might be another one to keep your eyes out for. And then I don't really, to be honest, I was gonna I'll look at their offense as well, but like I said, both teams' offense just looked horrible. There's nothing I would recommend going for here. You know what I mean? Like, this is just awful. And then I don't think the defenses really did much either. 19 and 18, yeah, that's not great. Overall, it was definitely a kickoff to an NFL season. I think it would have been a lot different if you had the additions of Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and the refs weren't doing everything in their power to fuck the Lions over, something like that. I think it would have been a lot better of a game, but oh well, football's back. Good luck, everybody. I'll make another video probably. It's maybe some point this week. I don't know for sure when, because I'm going to be in another state, but we'll have to see. Anyway, I'll catch all you sexy motherfuckers later.